Oh, are you there?
What's up, man?
Perfect.
How you doing?
I am amazing. How about you?
Good, brother. How's this audio? Is it all right?
It's good. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Never done this on my phone before. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think that works well.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing amazing, brother. How about you?
Mighty fine. It's a beautiful day here in Austin, so doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the show, man. Very excited.
Thanks for having me, brother.
How's Austin?
Austin's incredible, man. Have you ever been?
Never. I really want to go.
It's a different type of energy from most cities that I've ever been to, at least in the U.S. It's awesome.
Why would you say that?
The example I always use is I go to the gym called Squatch right down the road from here, and it's indoor, outdoor, no shoes, no shirt, sauna, cold tub. And
Wow.
I always say if you go into Squatch and you sit in the sauna, the odds of you having a conversation with somebody who's not doing something cool is extremely low. And I would say that's a microcosm of Austin in general.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any experience with like that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've had people on the podcast from
wow.
being in sauna. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So I want to talk about that. But first, Nolan, give us a little bit on, just for the listeners who have no clue who you are, even though they should. Like, who are you? What do you do? But like more specifically, what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, man. So my name's Nolan, obviously from Atlanta, Georgia originally, and my first love was baseball. I wanted to play professional baseball adamantly. I had just about convinced myself that I was a professional baseball player, but I just wasn't in the league. So yeah, most of my youth and my college was centered around becoming the best baseball player I could be. And so that's sort of what got me into the health space generally.
Like, yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, just like reading different books, like, okay, well, how could I get an advantage with my breath? So I read the book called Breath by James Nestor, and I learned a lot about that. And then I'm like, okay, well, I want to get my mindset right. So I read Think and Grow Rich and Mental Game of Baseball, and I wanted to get my body right. So I read Tom Brady's TB12 method and things like that. So I was always looking for the advantage in the way of knowledge, like learning something that I knew that the people I was competing against were not taking the time to learn, and then implementing that into my life and my routines. Ultimately, that led me down other rabbit holes and got a little bit more esoteric as it went on. And baseball, actually, you know what's funny is one of my buddies sent me Solbra's account like 3 or 4 years ago, probably.
Dude, sorry, I think your headphones are getting like disconnected or something. I think.
Can you hear?
From the actual phone?
Sorry,
try like disconnecting. And there we go.
Not really.
Like there's some
Is that better?
weird. Yeah, that's better. But I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I'll just move this a little closer. Sorry about that, man.
Perfect. No, my bad, dude. There was some like weird static. I don't know if it's like the headphones or I don't know.
No, it's probably the headphones. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I apologize for interrupting.
Let's see. That should be better. I'm trying to make the audio so you can't hear like cars and stuff. But yeah, so just got a little bit more esoteric, and as Solbra became more famous and stuff, he was like the first introduction into that world for me in terms of like the more esoteric style of living and health. And I don't know if you can relate, or if you have an account or somebody that sort of got you down the rabbit hole, but that was it for me. And from there, kind of just kept on going down the rabbit holes, connecting with people, and wanted to learn as much as I could. So ultimately started my own podcast, and that's probably how you've come to know who I am, through Twitter and the podcast.
That's it. Yeah, it always seems like through this kind of, I don't want to label it, but like this journey of self-mastery, it always gets like esoteric.
Yeah. Well, it has to. It's like, Ryan Ayala, I'm sure, right?
Yes. I interviewed him 2 episodes ago. It's not out yet, but yeah.
Nice, dude. He's a G. We lived together in Austin for a little bit last year. But he always says, like, if you're uncommon, finding uncommon friends is uncommon. So it's sort of like if you want to become the most healthy, it's going to take you to, you're going to have to go down
That's
some
really,
esoteric holes because most people aren't healthy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to talk about your baseball career. There's a lot of things that I want to unpack here. First of all, like this journey in your baseball career of trying to be the best, right? Um, you're not playing baseball anymore?
I'm not.
Okay, so from that career of, I don't want to say it's neuroticism because I don't know you and I did not know you then, but from that just desire of wanting to be the best, what was your biggest takeaway for life, or like a life lesson maybe?
Hmm. I would honestly say throughout my career, so I played 4 years at a big Division I school, ACC, like one of the top programs in the country in terms of like comparatively.
Okay.
And then my 5th year, I graduated, went to a smaller Division I school, and my performance at the 5th year, even against teams that we played that were like the number, like we played multiple top 10 teams that year, and my performance against them was drastically better. And the reason I think that is, this is probably the biggest lesson, and I tweeted about this today, actually, ironically.
It's not
At Virginia,
ironically, bro. It's a
yeah,
synchronicity.
it is, yes. At Virginia Tech, I became neurotic. Like the example I tweeted about was my brother's wedding happened during my 5th year, and I missed a weekend in the middle of the season, drank for
Mhm.
4 straight nights, got 5 hours of sleep 3 nights in a row, didn't touch a baseball.
Mhm.
And if you don't play baseball, it's like that's like a sin in a way. Like if you're a pitcher, like you have an off day every once in a while, but like you
Mhm.
need to stay on top of it. You need to like keep your feel.
Okay.
And didn't pick up a baseball, drank, slept awful, ate kind of whatever. I mean, it was a wedding, so I was like whatever. Um, and then on that Tuesday, so came back to Virginia on Monday. On Tuesday, played the number 8 team in the country, University of Virginia, and we
Mhm.
ended up winning. I pitched 3 innings, gave up no runs, no hits, and we ended up winning on a walk off.
Boom.
And it was one of the best outings of my career in one of the biggest moments. And I remember telling my coach afterwards, because my coach and I were very close, and he's like, "How was the wedding?" I'm like, "Coach, I'll be honest with you, I drank the entire weekend, didn't sleep well, and I didn't pick up a baseball." And the lesson that I took from that, we used to do these reflection things, which I really liked, like
Mhm.
reflecting on our outings. And I remember writing vividly, things affect you how you perceive they will affect you. And the broader lesson there for me was at Virginia Tech, I was neurotic. I had to be in control of so many things for me to feel like I could go out and perform. But when you sort of flip that script, and this is not an excuse to just be like a degenerate, you know, it's not like you it's not like you shouldn't go and try to optimize things in your life, but becoming reliant on them is actually a
Mhm.
recipe for failure. So I would say that's the biggest shift is doing away with neuroticism and really just learning to trust myself in situations like that. And that
Kind
can
of.
obviously be extrapolated into real life.
It's kind of like a surrender. I love that. Things affect you as you perceive they will affect you. How has that applied to you right now?
Same as any other day. It's like an injury. Like say you're working out or in whatever you're doing, you get an injury.
Mhm.
You could perceive that it's an extreme negative. You're like, damn it, took me out of the gym, took me off the mats, took me out of a sport, whatever it is. But there's another quote. I love quotes. John Wooden said, "Things turn out best for the people who make the best out of the way things turn out." And it's sort of on the same line.
Wait, can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Things turn out best for the people who make the best out of the way things turn out.
Wow.
And so the injury is a great example. Say you get injured, you could sit there and pout and then digress and devolve and
Mhm.
atrophy, or you could take it as time to focus on things that you weren't focusing on before. Maybe you had a
Mhm.
muscle imbalance or a movement pattern that was out of whack that you can now focus on, enhance, and then implement that when you're back in healthy. Business is a great example. If you make a bad business decision, um, being able to take the information, not become neurotic about having to control X, Y, and Z and 10 million things. Take the information and iterate one step at a time and focus on the things that that you perhaps weren't focusing on before. It's going to turn out best, as John Wooden said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. During your baseball career, you talked about in the start that from trying to be the best, you were trying to absorb as much material as you could to use, right? Is there any, like, I'm just curious, favorite material to learn from that journey, like that you kept till today?
It's a good question. You know, I really liked the book Breath. I don't think that necessarily impacted me on the baseball field as much, but I think reading is so important. And I remember being like just literally jaw to the floor at like how neglected that usually is.
Right.
And how neglected my breathing was. I had never really focused on nasal breathing or jawline and why the jawline's important. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Think and Grow Rich was also good because it really just shows you the power of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it just lays out in front of you in crystal clear writing how powerful your internal dialogue is
Mm-hmm.
and the control that you can have over it. That was a good one. There's a book called The Inner Game of Tennis as well, which I read even though I was a baseball player, which I really liked. And it talked about this thing called relaxed concentration. And when
Okay.
you see a lot of, I don't know, do you watch much baseball?
I don't watch any sports.
Yeah. I mean, I don't watch many sports now either. That's the good thing. But back in the day when I was watching pitchers that I like to emulate, the ones that I always emulated were the ones who, Jacob deGrom's a good example, where it's like he was so focused and concentrated, but it looked like he could have taken a nap. You know what I'm saying? Like you know what I'm. There's probably
Mm-hmm.
other
Yeah, yeah,
examples
yeah.
like that. Just people are
Mm-hmm.
so calm. It's like, how is this person so calm and so dialed in at the same
Yeah, yeah,
time?
yeah.
And there's this the idea that they talked about in that book. I can't remember the author's name, but he talked about the idea that you have two selves, like you have the higher self and the lower self, and the one of your selves is going to try to drag you down
Mm-hmm.
and take you out of the moment and out of that concentration. And the sort of the idea that's the one you should talk to that person. You should talk to that self. You shouldn't listen to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
So those are probably the three big ones I remember from college.
Yeah. I mean, talking about breathing, which is something that I'm very into at the moment. Breath work has completely changed my life and how I see my being, I guess. And it's simply because we just do it all the time. And that's why we take it for granted. But it's once you start to consciously work with it that you start to realize its power and like power of yourself that you did not know existed and could exist.
100% agree. I think the example I always use is you can go 40 days without food. You can go a week or two without water if you really want to, but try to go 10 minutes without breathing.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
great example.
but it's literally the most fundamental part of our biology in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
living. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say 99.9% of people, even me to a large degree, on most days, and especially up until I read Breath, I had never once thought about it, not a single
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Just in
Yeah.
their mouth breathing like an idiot.
Yeah. Talking about emulation as well, mentors. This is such a special topic, and I love it because um, I think 98% of my mentors I don't even know in real life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another subject in and of itself, the use of social media effectively. But
Mm-hmm.
mentorship for me was huge, man. And I'm very much so visually perceptive,
Okay.
and kinetically as well. Like I want to touch things. Like I learn best by doing and then
Mm-hmm.
watching.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was one of those things where something as specific as pitching, which obviously there's any rabbit hole, there's going to be an insane amount of nuance that people that are not familiar with it will not be able to like understand. But like watching somebody's delivery for me, okay, this guy's a similar height to me, he's a similar weight, he moves similarly to me.
Yeah.
So I would watch him pitch. An example would be like a Garrett Cole. I looked at Liam Hendricks for a little bit and just other people like that. But emulating them in the way that they moved is one way, meaning, okay, this guy, when he gets to this point of his delivery down the slope, he's doing this with his back hip, and you can tell that it like manifests in this way during his release and his follow through and all these things. But I loved watching dudes from a temperament. I loved emulating temperament. The people like Jacob deGrom as an example. And sort of on the other side of that would be a more fiery pitcher. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Ben Joyce. He was in college when I was in college, but he threw like extremely fast, and he would literally like scream at himself on the mound, like yelling at himself just to get so hyped up. And I love just sort of playing with those different temperaments, seeing what worked for people, seeing what worked for me. But yeah, in terms of emulation, I really enjoyed emulating the temperament and then also like the leadership style, because I was very much so involved in leading when I was a player. I considered myself a leader, and I think my teammates did as well. So I was very much so interested in emulating what I believe to be good leaders as well.
Nolan, I want to talk about the word Tyro now.
Cool.
Young soldier, right?
Yes, sir.
Why did that catch your attention? Where did you listen to the word? Why did you resonate with it?
The word Tyro was brought to my attention when I was thinking. I had the podcast was in the infancy stages. I had thought about doing a podcast, but like, as you may have experienced, it's like kind of figuring out the names of it. Like, you're like, oh, well, if I need to get a good name, I need to have a good brand, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking about like novice wisdom or novice's journey or something like that, but like they were all taken or they didn't sound very good. So I looked up synonyms for novice, and I saw this 4-letter word that TYRO. I'm like, huh, that's an interesting word. I've never heard it.
Yeah.
And looked it up, and then I looked up the etymology of it, and it turns out I don't know if there's a more adequate description of me in my current season of life, being a novice, a beginner, a young soldier in the battle of life, which I believe that it is. I believe that life is a sequence of battles in a larger battle. So yeah, it literally, I remember being like, okay, yeah, that's my word. Like, I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that's going to be the one. And I guess it's stuck ever since.
I love it. Life being a sequence of battles. So what's driving you to keep crushing it every day, keep battling?
What's driving me?
What gets you moving?
I feel like that's a deeper question than I or you might even realize.
Yeah, of course.
Well, ultimately, I think it's a battle can be won or lost, and I don't want to lose. So that's one part of it. I want to win the battle.
Okay.
And on a grand scale of life, I think that means like living a good life. Then deducing that, it's what is a good life. And to me, I believe a good life, something that as of late, a good life for me is becoming closer to God every single day. And that's sort of the battle. I believe that there is a legitimate spiritual battle going on. I think there's good and evil in the world. I think there's dark and light. I think there's God, and I think there's the devil. And I think every single day, really every single decision, every single moment is a battle in and of itself. But at this current point in my life, what really keeps me going is not wanting to lose that battle to Satan, and not wanting to lose that battle to the devil or the lower part of myself.
Right. What's your current understanding of God?
I believe that, this is actually a good question too. So I was raised Christian in a Southern Baptist church and went to church for a long time, my whole youth and into college. And then in college, I got away from it because I realized I would go into a church and I'd realize how much I did not want to be like the men in that church.
Wow.
They were meek in the wrong sense, in my opinion. They were passive. They were not useful in many ways. In many ways, they were usually fat, out of shape, or skinny, or like just what I perceived in the moment, right or wrong, as being not good men, in my opinion. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, look, if they're following this Jesus guy and they're like this, and I don't want to end up like that, so like, why would I want to follow Jesus? Why would I want to be like more like Jesus?
Okay.
And so I got away from it. But a book called Wild at Heart by an author named John Eldredge really flipped my script on that. And also just reading the New Testament again with my own new perspective. There's a verse called Matthew. The verse is Matthew 10:34, and Jesus is talking, and he says, "Do not believe that I come to bring peace. I do not come to bring peace, but a sword." So he's telling people that I come to bring a sword, and I'm like, huh, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I thought Jesus was like this sort of passive, meager, like or meek, like just lets people slap him in the face type guy. And so that kind of got me down this rabbit hole of learning who I believe Jesus really was. So my current understanding of God, in my opinion, is there is a heavenly Father. I think that um, there is a God that is watching over us, and He created us and created us for a purpose and created us for a divine purpose. And I believe He sent Jesus down here so that we could walk behind Him and do our best to become more like Him during our life. And that sort of stems to the previous question of what drives me, um, is becoming more like Jesus every day.
Yeah, I love that. How do you think? I don't know if you can completely win the battle, but you can take control of this relationship with the devil,
Mm.
right? How do you not let him take over?
Well, Jocko Willink always says you can't win a game unless you know you're in the game, first off. So I think a
Boom.
lot of people, there's a very famous quote as well that says the devil's greatest lie is convincing you he does not exist.
Mm,
And I think that's the number one problem, because people
that's a
and
crazy quote.
there's so many reasons for that too. Like you think about all the vices we have nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you've got porn that literally takes the soul away from a man.
Yeah.
You've got unlimited access to social media, just mindless scrolling. You've got drugs at any corner. You have, I mean, video games where that taps into like the innate part
Mm-hmm.
of the man's soul that wants to build and create, but it's not in real life. So it's so destructive in that way because it takes you out of doing that in real life. You
Mm-hmm.
have the fear mongering of politics and all this stuff. You have so many things that distract us
Right.
that I believe they take us away. Like if you don't take a step back, you actually lose sight of the fact that there is a battle going on. So to answer your question, most people don't, in my opinion, don't even know that they're in a game or a battle.
Right. Right.
And as we mentioned, you can't win a game or a battle that you don't know you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it
So that's
starts
the
with awareness,
yeah, exactly,
like
exactly,
everything.
exactly. Great point.
Mm-hmm. I
So
love
yeah,
it.
I think it starts with awareness, and then I think you have to. There's no. I'm just dropping quotes out here, dude. I think Ansel Adams, the
Keep dropping
photographer,
them.
said, "Any if you do not know where you're going, any road will take you there." So then it starts with awareness, and then it starts with where you want to
Taking.
go.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So you start with, okay, wait, I'm in a battle, or at least I orient myself in life. I
Mm-hmm.
now understand that I'm in this field of battle against
Mm-hmm.
different forces, and then it's choosing where you want to go. Like, who do
Mm-hmm.
you want to fight for?
Mm-hmm.
And I for one want to fight for good and what I believe to be good.
I love
Um,
that.
so I think those two things, and then also relying on the strength that God gives me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that I am like I'm really pretty inadequate in a lot of ways. I'm not the most intelligent. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the most well spoken. I have my vices. I'm not the most disciplined. And all these things. It's like that's how the devil wins when
Right.
I succumb to those feelings of doubt. But when I fill myself with the Spirit of God and the strength and the power and love and discipline that He gives me, then that's how you win. So awareness, deciding where you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and then utilizing the spirit that God gives us.
Yeah. I love that. You mentioned a little bit porn over there as one of like these vices from the devil. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you a quote, which is you can't quote me exactly on this one because I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but porn is a direct collaboration with the devil himself. by Jordan Peterson.
Mm.
This is one of the biggest topics that I talk about in this podcast, simply because from experience, it is, as the quote says, and it is just so easily available, so prevalent, it's everywhere, that I think it always will need more awareness. But you said it takes the soul out of a man. Why?
Well, first, Alfonso, I want to encourage you and sort of like fill your cup in saying that like it's so awesome that you're talking about that and that you actually are bringing awareness to that, because like we just mentioned, that's the first step, dude. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've all had this journey. I mean, and porn is so pervasive in today's society, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
modern world. It's
Mm-hmm.
like most people don't even begin to even understand that it's a problem until they're well addicted and they've already skewed so
Yeah,
many things in their brain.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, the question was, why do I think it takes the soul from a man?
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes the soul from a man because the most innate desire that we have as human beings, in my opinion, is to procreate. That is the most powerful desire that we have.
Right.
The overwhelming majority of our decisions that we make, subconsciously or consciously, are
For that.
to be able to do that. And
Okay.
so similar to what I just said in video games, when you watch porn, when you take it out of like the real world and the actual act of procreating, all the energy that would otherwise be used to do that in the real world gets dissipated. Because does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
So like porn, I mean, you said it best. Porn is like, on the thing that I'm looking at right now, I have unlimited access, if I so choose, to probably, I don't know, millions, hundreds of millions of pornographic photos, video. I mean, literally billions,
Mm-hmm.
probably.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just
That is.
wild to even think about. Think about it.
Yeah, it is.
And I think maybe it was Nick Sweeney who said this on my podcast,
Mm-hmm. Probably was.
who said, if you took a monk from like a Chinese monastery that had been studying Zen Buddhism for his whole life and meditating, and put him in a phone for a year, or put him in a room with a phone for a year that had access to porn, he would probably watch porn. And I think he's
Mm-hmm. Absolutely is.
spot on.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is why I think it literally takes away the energy that we're meant to utilize to live life with the end goal of procreating.
Yeah.
And
It
it
takes
just
your
gets
energy
thrown to the
away.
wayside.
Yeah, it takes your energy away, and it completely takes over you. Completely.
Mm-hmm.
It rewires you completely. And that's why it's so difficult for kids to stick out of it.
Yeah, man.
Right?
And I'll full candor, like the first time I watched porn was when I was 7 years old.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I think about this all the time, because porn has been the vice in my life that it's never been drugs. I've never had a problem with drugs, never been alcohol, never had a problem with that. It's never really been social media. It's been porn. And I think that, I mean, literally when I was 7 years old, like the plasticity of our brains at 7 years old is just incomprehensible. We can't, like, it's literally, you're learning and rewiring yourself constantly. So
Mm-hmm.
I think about the impact that's had on me, and the negative impact it's had on me for sure. And I'm like, dude, I was 7 years old. I didn't even know how to use a computer, and I somehow like figured out a way to watch porn on it. So you think about the pervasiveness of it in our society, and also it's almost encouraged.
Yeah.
You
Fuck the
know?
elites, man.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the diabolic, the demonic, the lie of Satan. Like I think Satan wants that to be normalized. He's like, oh, porn, OnlyFans? Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, that's fine. That's great. Let's sponsor events. Let's get every
Yeah.
single girl on social media posting borderline pornographic images so that we can get these guys to zap all of their energy and not be able to be sovereign and vital in their own way, so that they can follow what we tell them. And yeah, I hate porn. I
Yeah.
adamantly hate it.
What a crazy and powerful topic, no?
I think it's one of the great threats to our nation. Like America is, I'm an American
Absolutely.
citizen, so America, but also just the modern world. I think it is literally the greatest threat.
It is. I do think so as well. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest points that I've talked about in the podcast with, which is it is truly one of the biggest threats to the minds of everyone on this planet who at
Once
least
again,
has
man,
access to it.
Yeah. Well, once again, I mean, I encourage you to keep doing that, and I want to applaud you and
Thank you.
sort of
Yeah.
give you your light on that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think like 90 out of 100 times with the guests, this is a topic that appears. And I don't even have it planned. It just comes out because everyone has an experience with it, which is really sad, but it is. Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing on it. The fact that, like, I saw some statistic a long time ago. It was like 95% of men admit to masturbating to porn at least once or something like that. And I would honestly,
that is crazy.
in the modern world, I would say it's probably even, I would say it's higher than that, frankly. Like, off the top of my head, I know one person in my life that if I had to bet all the money in my account that he's never watched porn, I would bet that he's never done that. And that guy's happily married as a young guy.
Yeah.
And he's an absolute savage. So I don't think that I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I want to talk about, give me a second. No, I'll continue. So, kind of a little bit on the topic, which is like the importance of reflection. And it's something that it's been important for you at least. Has this always been like that? Have you always been reflective? Have you always, like there probably was some type of moment or series of moments that showed you the importance of that habit or way of life?
Another great question. I have always been interoceptive in a way. I've always wanted to learn and grow, and I don't think that's possible unless you reflect.
Of course.
And I remember growing up, I mean, my dad was always good at writing, and he was reading, and he was always, even from a baseball perspective, I remember going to like young games or like games when I was young, and we'd be driving back, and he'd say, "Oh, what'd you think about that?" or "How'd you do here?" and just reflecting on my performance, and even sometimes when I had a bad attitude, I remember getting grounded when I would show my ass on the field and have a bad attitude. My parents would ground me, so that would be like, okay, well, a negative outcome or a negative consequence from this, and then you reflect, okay, why did that happen? Maybe if I don't do that next time, I won't have this negative consequence and all that. But also, I've always been, and I think it's partially my natural temperament in terms of like, I'm very much so aligned with Noah Ryan's hunter type temperament in a lot of ways. I don't know if it's partially that. I would say it's partially that and also partially nurture, like my parents. My dad always, I grew up watching war movies and cowboy movies and like the first books that I would read, I remember being about like war and battle and things like that. So one thing I noticed from a young age is that all the great leaders in the military were always writing or always reading or always reflecting. And that's something that I kind of romanticized for a long time.
Would you say prayer to be the same?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think any intentional form of writing or thinking, really, I would say, or speaking, is a form of reflection. Like what you and I are doing right now is reflecting, and that's why I love the fact that you have a podcast. And that's one of my favorite things about my podcast is it's an act of reflecting with you, in tandem with you, which is so cool. That's how we grow as humans, and that's how relationships are built, and that's how the world is built. So, yeah, I would say prayer is absolutely a meditation as well. Is reflection. Any intentional, I would say any intentional task really is a form of reflection.
Okay. Is there any point in your day, at least, that you reserve for some like serious reflection?
You know, in the past I've been very intentional about it, like where I've journaled and and waking up and reading the Bible is one of my favorite. I wake up. I just moved to Austin, and I'm looking at my car right now. I just literally today, I've been here for a month, and I just unpacked my car because I got an apartment. So I've been living out of my car and sleeping on my buddy's couch for a month. So my schedule's been all out of whack. But before that, when I was in Atlanta, I would wake up, have my base she legit, and read the Bible, and then pray. And that's an incredible way to reflect.
Wow.
reflect at the beginning of the day, but also sort of set the intention for the beginning of the day. And another thing I've done, I don't know if you have a car, if you drive a lot. I used to be a compulsive music listener, like
Wow.
anytime, anywhere, every time I get in the car, music. One of
Mhm.
my favorite things now, Alfonso, is literally getting in the car and like throwing my phone in the passenger seat and just driving.
Yeah,
So
I've
that's
been
another
doing
really
that for
useful
the
time.
past couple months as well, and it is
It,
incredible.
it's cathartic, dude. On a sunny day,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I usually do that where when I do know where I'm going, like I know the direction at least, um, because now if I could go there, it's automatic, right? I don't even have to think of if I turn left or right, and it's almost as if I'm not driving. I'm just in my mind,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, it's a very modern and interesting way to reflect.
yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I kind of laughed just now is I actually don't think it's very modern at all. I think the car is modern, but what have human beings been doing for, at the
Mm.
very least, thousands of years? We've been riding
Mhm.
horses,
Mhm.
and you think about the how cathartic riding horses is even today. Think about when you're an American Indian, literally just galloping through the American plains on a horse, dude. There might not be a more cathartic release for a man, frankly.
Mhm.
And this is why motorcycles are so appealing to a lot of guys, and even walking, dude. Like you think about sprinting in the wind. Like we've been moving forward as fast as we can for eternity. So I don't think that the actual act of like a cathartic release from moving forward
Mhm.
without distraction is new, but the car is obviously new, and I think
Yeah, that's
if
a
used intentionally, it can become the same.
that's a really special point of view, and I just noticed that a lot of the examples you give, at least in your podcast, um, you go back to our ancestors, right? It's a way of thinking you use, no?
Absolutely, it's a paradigm I use in most of my decisions.
Why? And like how? Like how did that start to happen? When did you stop? Yeah, how did that start to happen?
Sort of stems back to what I was saying when you asked about reflection. I grew up literally on Saturday mornings. I would walk at like 6 a.m. I'd watch cowboy westerns with my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and so obviously those are not, you're not going to have a lot of phones and things like that in in that life, and and it was romanticized. And my dad's from Texas, so I literally grew up like my favorite song, Toby Keith, rest in peace. He just passed away. My favorite song for my entire childhood was "Should Have Been a Cowboy." So that whole lifestyle was romanticized to me, like the Western sort of with the land lifestyle. My
Mm-hmm.
entire life, I
Wow.
grew up hunting as well, so
Wow.
being connected with the land.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow, that's special, right? Being connected with the land while hunting. That's a. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so
Sorry.
yeah, I
Yes.
think I just kind of I've just always added on to that. I don't know if it's really been intentional. Frankly, I just find myself thinking, you know what? What would Sitting Bull do here? What would Crazy Horse do here? What would Wyatt Earp do here? Like some of these
Yeah.
Western ancestors and even um, ancestors from other parts of the world as well. But I find myself thinking back to like the tribal
Mm-hmm.
cultures of the American
Yeah.
Indians a lot.
Yeah. I've noticed that from you, and I love that you use that paradigm.
It's
So
helpful.
yeah, talking about the podcast, the Tyro Experience, which I love so much. Like I love your approach with your guests so much. Um, well, first of all, why does it exist?
Well, first off, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you even listen. That's still surreal to me that people like, I'm like an idiot. Like the fact that people will like tune in and listen to me talk is like the fact that you had me on, man. Or you're having me on. It's surreal in a way, because I remember asking people when I was 3 episodes in to come on the podcast. Um, and I
Oh
remember my
yeah,
buddy Zach specifically was like, dude, it's cool that you're asking me to come on. It's just cool how it comes full circle, man. So I appreciate you
yeah,
saying that.
dude.
But
Believe it or not, I admire you a lot, so that's why I wanted to have you in the podcast.
that means a lot, man. That really does. I
Yeah.
really mean that. What was the question again? It was about why does the
Why
Tyro
does it
experience
exist? Yeah.
the Tyro experience?
Mm-hmm.
The short answer is I had a conversation with my mom. I was 23 years old. It was about a year ago, just about a year ago, actually. Wow. I think it was exactly a year ago, like probably within 10 days of a year. was having a conversation with my mom. I was a year out of college baseball, which was or baseball in general, which was my love and my focus and my dream. And
Yeah.
I was more or less just lost in the wilderness. Frankly, I had my own landscaping business that I liked. I was living at home, saving money, and it was adequate. I was doing jujitsu. I really loved it as well, but I didn't know what I wanted like the next season of my life to be.
Okay.
And I remember talking to her, and I don't know if you can tell already, but I have very wide variety of interests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I I guess
You're
you could say like
curious.
curious and
Mm-hmm.
eclectic in that way. So the short answer is I had this conversation with my mom, and she's like, "Why don't you just start talking to people?" I was blessed; my parents are well connected and well networked, so they're like, "We'll ask this person and ask this person," and I knew that
Wow.
I had some interesting connections in my circle, so I was like, "Frig, I'll just start talking to people."
Wow.
And then I thought, I'm actually curious if you've had this same experience, but
Mm-hmm.
my next thought was, cool, I'll just have conversations with people and put them in the podcast form. And they're conversations I would otherwise already have. So it'd be cool to just record them. And what I
Mm-hmm.
realized is I was dead wrong. They're not conversations I would have had. I would have never had this conversation with you if I
Of
did not already
course.
start a podcast. I
Yeah.
would have never talked to Mark Green yesterday or Megan Flanagan or Noah Ryan or any of these people that I've talked to. I would never have talked to them unless
Mm-hmm.
I had a podcast. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
is if I said, hey, like
Yeah,
a great
that's
example,
crazy, but yeah.
think about it. Like we wouldn't know if I would literally not know who you are if I did not start a
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and vice
Yeah.
versa. So, it's one step further than even recording conversations you'd otherwise have. It's opening doors that would otherwise never be open. So that's the short answer, which was still kind of long. But the long answer is, I've always just been extremely curious. I've been
Yeah.
extremely curious about everything. Like I want to
I
learn
love
about
that.
American Indians. I want to learn about baseball. I want to learn about jujitsu. I want to learn about war. I want to learn about leadership. I want to learn about business and real estate and
Mm-hmm.
hunting and fishing and all these things. And so the podcast in many ways is an outlet for me to explore those curiosities and then hopefully transfer some value to people that listen as well.
I love that so much. How do you approach your guests? This is what I'm very curious about because that's the most like the thing that I most admire from the pod.
Approach them in like finding them or in the conversational aspect.
So both. Yeah.
Finding them, it's pretty simple. It's literally just if I find you interesting and I want to have a podcast with you, then I just ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's as you can tell if you look through like the list of people I've had on, it's been
It's very
all over the place,
exactly, yeah.
to
That's
say the least.
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
So my sort of tagline with that is if I find somebody interesting and I want to learn something that they know, then I would like to have them on the podcast. But from the actual like tactical standpoint of the conversation,
Yeah.
um, what I did at the beginning is I would have notes, very
Mm-hmm.
loose notes. And
Mm-hmm.
this is sort of something that you see too, like Chris Williamson is an example. There's sort of a spectrum of podcasts. Some are very idea based and concept based.
Mm-hmm.
Some are very story based. And I very much so lean towards the stories.
Okay.
Within those stories, we obviously talk about concepts and things like that. But like the example would be Chris Williamson has like set notes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
this is no knock on him. He's absolutely crushing it. And he's one of the reasons I started a podcast. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
different. But I rely much more on the stories. I want to learn about who the person is, how they got to where they are,
Of course.
what lessons did they learn
Yeah.
along the way. And then from there, I really just sort of what you're doing, man. I kind of just let the conversation flow.
Mm-hmm.
I very rarely take notes now. Um, I really just try to sit and be with a person and trust that I'm going to be able to learn something or converse in such a way that it's beneficial for us both and the listener.
Right.
Because that really, I was talking to David Sutcliffe about this, like having notes.
Mm-hmm.
You can have like points you want to touch on, but it might take
Mm-hmm.
away from the natural
Mm-hmm.
orientation of
Mm-hmm.
the conversation. But then if you
Yeah.
keep like, oh, well, I want to go this way, but the conversation's going this way, it makes for a less interesting and less valuable conversation. So yeah, I really just try to learn. I try to be as curious as I can about who I'm talking to and learn as much as I can from them.
Yeah. I love that. And something else that I've noticed from your podcast and today's conversation is your expression with quotes.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Why? Why is that? How? Why?
Have you ever read Green Lights
Have I read Greenlight?
by Matthew McConaughey?
No.
Okay, first off, that's an absolutely incredible book, and I think it can kind of be perceived as gimmicky because Matthew McConaughey
Let
is
me see.
famous. I've read it
Green
twice.
Light,
It's one of my favorite books I've ever read.
Matthew. Okay.
He has not to be an evangelist for it, but I guess I am. He has a very unique way of telling stories in an entertaining way, but tying them into really, really powerful lessons. But one of the things he talks about is bumper stickers.
Boom.
Like quick, like a bumper sticker on a car. It's like, why would
Mhm.
somebody put that on there? It tells you something about them really quickly in a
Yeah.
non-obtrusive way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so quotes, in my opinion, are a way of minimizing the baggage of a quote, but like maximizing the value. Meaning, like, if I
Mhm.
can condense a lesson or a principle into a quote or an
Yeah.
idea into a quote, I can remember it so much easier, and then I
Wow.
can employ it like I've done in this conversation like probably
Mhm.
20 times already, just rattling off quotes. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's
but I
why I
love
think they're
it.
extremely useful.
Yeah. Which one's your favorite? Do you have a favorite at least?
Which quote is my favorite? That's a good question,
You
dude.
can give me a couple because I don't
Oh
know
yeah,
if
I was about
that's
to
an
say. I
easy
mean,
one.
one of
Yeah.
them, since Matthew McConaughey is top of mind in that book, he talks about um, attracting rather than chasing, and the quote is,
Wow.
"I stopped chasing butterflies and built a garden so they could come to me." That's one of them.
That one's really good. Wow.
Yeah. So you think about building an environment and becoming who you are, or becoming the person who would have or deserve or be the thing or have the things that you'd want. So that's a really good one. The other one I mentioned earlier, Matthew 10:34 has been instrumental in my life, which is, I do not come to bring peace, but a sword. Another verse that I love is, I believe it's Second Peter or Second Timothy 1:7, and this is actually the bio or the header on my Twitter
Mhm.
profile. It's, God does not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and self-control. And that's a
Okay.
powerful one to me.
Yeah, that's a very special one.
That's a good question, dude. I might actually start asking people that one.
Yeah, I think it's a. Yeah. I don't even know what's my favorite quote.
Yeah, that'd be. Let me flip it back on to you. Do you have one?
I have no idea. I have a list of quotes. I have to read them.
See, that's another. So I don't know if you follow Orpheus. I think you had him on the pod, so I'm sure you do.
Yes.
He posted something recently about like a journal that was filled up of quotes that he literally
Yeah.
just filled up over the years. I used to do that religiously.
Mhm.
I even have like a little leather journal that I carry around. A lot of the times I don't have it with me right now, but um, that's one of the coolest things to me. Like, I have stacks of journals, which I'm like, I don't really care much for a lot of possessions, but like I will protect those with.
Mhm.
I'll protect those.
I think I think I know which one's my favorite.
Let's hear it.
I don't remember who said this, but no man steps in the same river twice. I read that in the Daily Stoic. When I read it, I stopped for like 10 solid minutes. Incredible.
No man steps in the same river twice. Isn't that the truth, man? That's awesome. I might have to.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to write that down. That's awesome.
Both the river changed and the man changes.
You know, it's funny, and this is sort of off topic, but do you ever have like a quote or like a song maybe where it'll just immediately take you to a certain place, like a specific place?
Absolutely.
That quote,
Absolutely.
that quote you just said reminded me of a time I got into a cold river in Montana. I literally feel like I can see it in front of me right now.
Wow.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I love that quote, man.
It is very special. Yeah, I usually do have that happen, but with music.
Yeah. Take you
Yeah.
back to a specific time.
Yeah, it takes me completely out of where I'm at right now. It's very special. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nolan,
I love that quote.
what do you value most out of yourself?
Out of myself or in myself?
Both.
What I value in myself the most is what I believe to be the predominant imperative of man, of masculinity, is to protect and provide. I think
Okay.
the that is one of the things that I try to quote optimize for most of my life, is to be able to protect and provide for the people that I love the most, because I really do believe that that's a natural it's ingrained in us, in my opinion. And so that's something that I really that I value in myself. I also value in myself or at least I aspire to value, being a steward of of the gift that is life that God has given me, and all the things
Okay.
that come along with that. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
steward that gift particularly, but on a more specific level, being able to steward like the days, the weeks, the
Okay.
relationships,
Mm-hmm.
the actual aspects of life. Being able to steward those towards a good in a good direction. Um, yeah, as far as value out of myself, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? If you could expound on that a little bit.
Like, what do you? I guess I'll change one word. What do you love about yourself so much?
Mm,
Or
that's
maybe
a good
go.
question.
Maybe I mean you probably notice it when comparing, but like, what makes you say "wow" for yourself? Um, does that make sense? When
Absolutely
maybe
does, and
you
that's a
reflect
great
or
question too, man. Because frankly, and I don't know if it's just the season of my life that I've been in the last 2 or 3 years, just the transition. But I and my family will tell you this. Like I have a tendency to be harsh on myself, and then
okay.
sort of reflect that on people around me. Um, but that's a good question. I would say the, and I don't think that's a positive necessarily. Just
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that like as a good thing. I think that's like
Yeah.
something I'm working through. But
Mm-hmm.
I really do, man. I actually haven't thought about this in a while. That's a good question to make me think about like something I love about myself.
Yeah.
I really do love my curiosity. Like I love the fact that I like
Yeah.
am not afraid to risk sounding dumb. I'm not
That is
afraid to ask a really dumb question because I don't know and I want to know. I'm not afraid to walk into a room and look like an absolute fool because I've never walked into that room before.
wow.
Um, I'm just not afraid of those things, and that's something
Yeah.
that I really I that's taken time to cultivate. I've looked stupid and countless times have I looked like an absolute fool, but it's sort of calloused me in that way, and I really do. I love that about myself.
Yeah. I'm clipping that. I'm using that for the clips. That is beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. So for my last question, one that I ask all of my guests because I love so much, what brings you most joy in life?
Mm. Forgive the pause. I'm thinking about this one.
No, no, no.
What brings me the most joy in life is becoming closer to God, and I'll expand on that. My buddy Noah Heisman wrote a book called "This Way to the Stars: A History of the Hero," and he basically dove into the idea of vice and virtue,
Okay,
and he used the example of Hercules, which I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Hercules.
kind of.
So basically, Hercules um, was addressed by these two women, feminine figures, Arete, I believe, and Kakaya maybe or something. It was basically it's vice and virtue is what it represents. He was addressed by them, and vice said, "Hey, come with me. I'll be able to fill your bed with women. Your cup will always be full. Um, you'll never feel displeasure. You'll never feel uncomfortable. Come with me. It'll all happen like this." And then Arete, which I believe is virtue, said, she, and it's cool how they depict it. It's like she was very graceful, she was very elegant, and she walked
Mm-hmm.
behind Vice. Vice was very self uh, infatuated and walked in front and was the first to speak and was very done up in that way. And Virtue was very graceful and measured and said, "Hey, look, I won't give you any of those things. This is going to be an extremely hard path.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be challenged. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be roughed up. for lack of a better term. But in the end, what you will find is the greatest gift of all, which is essentially like becoming like your truest self, or what I would
Yeah.
interpret as becoming closer to God. And so
Wow.
let me to wrap that thought up, becoming closer to God, meaning what gives me the most joy is making a decision or living in such a way,
Okay.
because every decision will take you towards vice or virtue, literally
Mhm.
every single one. There is no in between. You are either making a decision that will take you towards vice, or you're making a decision that will take you towards virtue. And one layer deeper, you could just flip those words saying Satan or God. You could say
Mhm.
light and dark. You could say higher self, lower self. You could say evil and good. Um, every decision, you are either getting closer to Satan or you're getting closer to God. And so what brings me the most joy in life is knowing in my heart of hearts, when I make a decision, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
whether it's in a relationship or a conversation or an action
Towards.
or whatever, a decision that I know is making me or getting me closer to God. That's
Wow.
what brings me the closest, the most joy.
Yeah, Nolan, what an incredible episode. I loved it a lot.
Yeah, man. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. It's already been an hour. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, man, a lot for your time, your wisdom, and your love.
Likewise, brother. I want to once again encourage you to keep going. Like, how many episodes are you on?
I've recorded like 4 this week, actually.
Dude,
I think this I think this is going to be episode 25.
dude. So it really does feel surreal to me. Honestly, I'm like 60 something episodes in, and the fact that you reached out to have me on means it really does mean a lot, and I don't take that for
Mhm.
granted. So I want to thank you for that, and I want to encourage you to keep going, man. Like, you're killing it.
Yeah,
You're absolutely great at this. You do a great job.
I
Um,
appreciate it, man.
and likewise, brother, I appreciate your hosting and the love and the wisdom that you share as well.
Yeah, thank you, man. That means a lot. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.